Hi, everybody. Welcome to new mentor training for September 2021. I'm going to get straight into it. This should last about an hour. Hopefully, I can make it a little bit quicker if I zoom through some bits. Okay. So, quick introduction. My name's Branagh. I'm the lead tutor for mentoring here at Sussex University for the English Teacher Education Department. I'm also the lead tutor for science. So some of you might see me again in the subject meetings later on. Been at the uni for about 12 years, used to teach at what is now BACA. And before then, I was up in Essex when I lived in London. I've been a professional tutor, a mentor, an advanced skills teacher, and my specialism was training new staff, which is why I've got this job. Okay. How to use this session. So you should have up, and if you haven't done it already, the link is here to get our guidebook. So there's a mentor and professional tutor guidebook. Mostly it's for mentors, so it's mostly for us. And you should have that alongside you or split the screen or whatever when you watch this video. So if you need to pause, go and do that and then come back to the video. There are some slides that I won't go through in very much detail. They've got a little star on them. So if you wanted to look at them in more detail, particularly when we get to the observations, please pause the video, have a look at them, go back at them, but I won't go through all of it. Otherwise this would take forever. Accompanying this video, so this is just for new mentors. So you're either a brand new mentor or you're new to Sussex. If you're either of those, you should be watching this video all the way through. After this, you need to watch the generic mentor training. Now that's our specific training for all of our mentors to ensure that we don't have to do forms and new developments and stuff in our subject sessions, which have to be just for subject and subject specific. So we've detached the two things, which we didn't have a few years ago. And then those subject specific meetings will happen a week after you watch this video, the week of September the 20th. A tiny little bit of extra notes. If you're a school direct salaried mentor or part-time mentor, please do be sure to have a look at the guidebook in more detail and be in more contact maybe with your curriculum tutor so that you can understand the quirks of those programs. But this is general for our sort of mainstream mentors. It applies to all of you, regardless of what kind of trainee you've got, but there might be some extra stuff if you're a salaried mentor or a part-time mentor. So what are we doing in this session? We're going to fly through the role of the mentor, talk about what you're going to get from it, which is you'll get more from it than you'll put in, hopefully. I'm going to talk to you about how we create our courses, particular emphasis on the core content framework and the teacher standards and how they connect together. Then look at the year in the life of a mentor, look at how the course is constructed. How do we prepare for our new trainee? What happens after induction? How we assess our trainee, and talk about what might happen if it goes a bit wrong, which is very, very rare. So section 1, the role of the mentor. Now, first obvious thing to say is thank you so much for agreeing to become a mentor with Sussex University. We can't do anything without you. It's impossible. So you are the most important person in the life of the trainee. We're important at the uni as curriculum tutors, but we don't see them as much as you do. You know, if you think about a normal week, 4 days with the mentor, 1 day with uni, you do the maths. You're an incredibly important person and have a big responsibility for how they start this profession. You know, it's up to you to turn them into the person that your department would want to employ. No pressure. Think about the reasons for why you wanted to become a mentor. Did you have a great mentor when you were training? You're like, oh, I want to give back. So much about teaching is about giving, isn't it? So do you want to give back and get part of that community? Do you want to improve your classroom practice? Because this will definitely improve your classroom practice. And maybe it's about career development. You're going through, you want to go into different facets of school life. You want to go into management. You want to become a professional tutor. And obviously you need to be a mentor to be able to do those things. So the benefits, it really does help you to be better in the classroom. There's no question. Some of the lessons that I taught when I was a mentor, when I've got a new trainee, are the best lessons I've ever taught. You've got this new teacher sat at the back of your room and you really want to show them your busy bits. And you unpick why you do what you do. It turns the that tacit knowledge, that held knowledge into explicit knowledge. And that's the key really to being a mentor, is to articulate how you do what you do. And that's part of that second bit there. So learning new techniques by observing your trainee, hopefully your trainee will teach you something. You'll watch them do something and go, oh, that's cool. I'm going to do that in my lessons. It gives you great experience of managing people. All trainees need managed. We have some trainees that are easier maybe to manage than others. Some of our trainees are career changers. So they've got in certain habits in their previous career space, and we sometimes have to undo those and reframe it again within teaching, because schools are quite odd places to work compared to the rest of the world. Our hours are very different for sure. And we learn a lot about our pupils by being at the back, not at the front. You see things that you didn't necessarily know was going on. It's really, really interesting, that bit. So what does a mentor do? Now, your real job is really, the only way I could think of it properly is you're the Jedi Master, okay? And you're the person that guides the trainee through every single facet of this beginning of their profession. So we have to train them to teach. We have to train some of them to be a professional. We have to train them to be within the school environment. And we do that just like we would teach our subject, is we do it in chunks. We don't just go straight in with high level teaching. We want them to start at quite an easy level so we can build their confidence, just like we scaffold our lessons in lots of ways. We help them to plan and teach their lessons. That's really important. It's not, there's the scheme of work, off you go. We must prepare them for teaching by showing them how to plan. Again, at uni, we teach them how to plan lessons, but only really when they're in school can that reality meet the sort of theory that they've learned at university. We'll have got them to plan lessons, but it's abstract when they don't know the children. They really learn to plan with you. That's the main role of a mentor, is to help the trainee to plan their lesson, then observe their lesson and help them move forward. Now, you do have to be their assessor. So not only are you their guide, their critical friend in school, you also have to make judgments. And that's where there's a conflict. It's got that your role has a duality. So yes, you're nurturing and supporting, but you also sometimes have to go, nah, hang on, this isn't good enough. I need you to be better at this, because currently the kids aren't moving forwards at the right rate. And it's because you're not listening to feedback. So we do have to be really honest in our feedback with them if we want them to get better, which of course we do. Now, that's something to read later on about what the Department for Education think about being a mentor. This phrase about suitably experienced. Now, don't let that bit worry you. Experience can come in all kinds of forms. Some people have been teaching for 20 years and really wouldn't make a very good mentor because they're not very good at sharing. They want their classes to themselves. So experience isn't everything. Some of our best mentors are actually quite new to the profession, and they remember what it's like to be a trainee, and they know how to guide somebody forward. So it's somebody who's good at the job is what we're looking for. A great mentor will follow the mentor standards. Please have a look at those in your own time. Trusting relationships, support. It's the kind of words that you'd expect to see. This is what trainees think. So these words are maybe more important than anything else we need to think about. Support is a word that comes up again and again and again. Approachable is incredibly important. We can't keep, I know how busy we all are, but if we constantly deflect them, they're going to feel that dejected, that you don't want them there. So approachable, we do need to know our stuff. If we constantly say, oh, I don't know how to do that lesson, we're not going to be a great mentor. Friendly is important, welcoming, positive, experienced in how to get children to learn. So again, somebody could learn a year's worth of stuff in a week. Somebody else, it takes 10 years. We need to be good at our feedback, and it's about opportunities in school. Don't hold things, encourage them to join the drama production, encourage them to do clubs after school. Okay, so second section, and a very important section for this year, is how do we create our courses at Sussex? Now, New to initial teacher education over the last 2 years is something the government has brought in called the Core Content Framework, hereafter to be known as the CCF. Okay, what would education be without an acronym? Now, basically, what they've done is looked across initial teacher education courses and thought, right, we need to have a core entitlement, keyword, core entitlement for our teachers, for our new teachers. And they've brought together a series of statements called Learn That statements and Learn How To statements, linked it to the teacher standards, which I'll come on to in a sec. Now, we need to follow these throughout the year. Now, you don't need to worry too much about it as a new mentor or as a mentor in general. All you need to know is there's 5 core areas that make a lot of sense, right? Behavior, pedagogy, curriculum, assessment, and professional behaviors. Now, and there's the link there if you wanted to look at the big document, but you don't really need to do that, because what we've done at Sussex is we've obviously taken this CCF, looked at it in minute detail, realized obviously that we cover all of it anyway, because we've been in a well-established teacher education program for a very long time. So the entitlement issue wasn't an issue for us. So we weren't going, oh no, we haven't been doing that. Of course, we've been doing all of it. But our job has been to unpick the CCF and go, right, let's make sure that our programs overtly link to this document, that overtly make sure that we are covering this entitlement of the trainee. So our curriculum wheel here is what all our curriculum. So for the various different subjects, we've got our own curriculum map. Okay, and each one of you will be sent that, or it's in the partnership Padlet. Each one of you will be sent that, and you can look at that within your subject specialism. Now, the maps obviously take the CCF, the national curriculum. We weave those in, we add an awful lot of extra stuff, particularly subject-specific scholarship, okay? And then the trainees follow this curriculum all the way through the year, and it's also mapped against the teacher standards. And that's what they're assessed against at the end, okay? So CCF comes in, national curriculum comes in, we turn it into our large, rich, detailed and creative curriculum content. And then that's what takes them through the year. Okay. And then at the end of the year, we're assessed against the teacher standards. Now, obviously, we don't ignore the teacher standards until the end. We must be mindful of them all the way through. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Now, there are documents to help us with this. We've got the main one for you as a mentor each week to look at, and to look at in detail before your trainee starts, is this thing called the Learning Progression Framework, (mentors). Now, this picture here, the pink one with high expectations, I've just taken a little snapshot of one to show you what it looks like. And I'll show it. In fact, I'll go to a detailed one now so that you can see. Now, we've broken this up into 2 main sections for each standard and linked it to those core sections of the CCF, so the 5 core sections. Now, this bit here is linked to standard 1, which is linked to professional behaviours in the CCF. Now, it's the one that we're going to look at most as a new, when we get our new trainee, pretty much that's what we focus on in the first phase, is this professional behavior. Do they turn up? Are they following policies? And that's why I've chosen this to put in here. Now, the Learning Progression Framework gives us a series of questions. And that's our big push this year for our mentors. It's asking questions of our trainees. So we've given you some guidance here. We've given you some examples. We've broken them down into, these are the kind of questions you might ask in the early phases. So between when they arrive in September and October, and then up to December. And then the other bit of this document gives you examples of what evidence we need to look at in order that the trainees are moving through their entitlement in their curriculum towards meeting the teacher standards. And it has to be evidence driven. So we've got this document, the learning progression framework, basically for mentors. The trainees need to have a good knowledge of it. That's our prompts. Now, that's a daily and weekly document. In all discussions with the trainee, we'll use it, okay? Now, the document that we use at strategic points where we're assessing the trainee and seeing how they're moving towards the standards is called the Learning Progression Framework Assessment. Now, there are statements in there, flick forward, excuse me, that help us to see where the trainee is and whether we can see them moving in the right direction. So are they meeting kind of the minimum that we would expect for a trainee each stage? Now, right at the beginning of their training, they're observing, they're discussing, okay, and they're getting into conversations with expert colleagues about what they're seeing. And that's the tone, really. And when you look at the assessment framework, that's what we're looking for. So are they building a rapport with their students? Now, if they're not, by the time we get to October half term, we know there's something going not quite right, okay? Now, this language is so important. This language that we get from the CCF and we embed it into our programs is key for a mentor. And it shows us what the trainees should be doing. Lots of observation, lots of conversations, and professional behavior, okay? Now, we put all that together, weekly meetings using the learning progression framework for the mentors, strategic points, we use that assessment framework. And what the trainees have, which I'll show you in more detail later on, is this pretty one with the cup of tea and the apple. And that's the professional practice record. Now, they fill that in and you sign it off. Okay, so you will write targets for it. But again, won't say too much about that because we'll come to that later on. Okay. These are the teacher standards that we're constantly moving towards. So looking at them formatively as we go through the early stages of their development and summatively at the end to show that they've met them. And this is what we assess them on. This is what they gather evidence on. And this is what we assess them on. The CCF is their entitlement. It builds their curriculum through the year. This is what we look at the end and throughout the year formatively to check they're on the right track. Okay. Okay, so section 3, guide through the course structure. All right. Now, I'm just going to use the course structure that you can see in the main guidebook, which is on our partnership pages. Okay. Now, but it's easy just to look at it here, isn't it? So currently, the trainees are fully embedded into induction. It's quite an intense induction here at Sussex. Lots of professional studies going on, lots of curriculum studies going on. The theme is always to get them ready to go into school. So we do lesson planning, we talk about our curriculum, we talk about how we build our subject knowledge and how we get kids to build their subject knowledge, basically. The week of the 20th of September, you'll be involved in a Zoom meeting with your trainee. They will get in touch with you to organise that. We'll make sure that happens, or hopefully happens. And they arrive in school on the 27th of September. That's the first day of the practice. They're with you 4 days a week, back at uni every single Friday. So when we come to talk about designing timetables, don't plan it for a Friday. They're not going to be with you, okay? Now, this first phase we call finding out. Okay, linking back to the CCF, observing, talking, building rapport, learning about policies. It's this big knowledge building phase of their development. They'll be doing little bits of starters, they'll be doing bits of plenaries. And before October half term, that's when we want them to teach one full lesson, no more. Okay, if they do more, they come unstuck later on because then it gets built up to 8 too soon. All right, so one before October half term, they get October half term to think about it. If they don't do one before half term, it's kind of stressful for them, to be honest, especially if all their mates have done one. Excuse me. They're like, oh, I haven't done one. I'm really worried. Okay, so please make sure they teach a lesson before October half term. It is co-planned with you. All right. Don't just leave them on their own. They need to do it with you. There's our October half term. Notice it's not called a holiday. independent study time. They've got to be working. They've got lots to do. Now, that first assessment point, you'll be discussing their progress with them before half term. Get that form filled in. Again, I'll show you the details of that later. And then it gets sent to us by the professional tutor that first Monday after half term. Okay, but you'll already be done with it as a new mentor. They build their timetable up all the way through the next bit to December. So they're building up to 8 contact hours. If you've got 100-minute lessons, you'll modify that. If you've got 50-minute lessons, it's 8 50-minute lessons, because pretty much it takes the same amount of effort. And we call this trying out. It's a bumpy road, okay? They're building up their knowledge and they're feeling quite secure maybe before October half term. First lesson goes brilliantly because they've put 10 hours into it. Should do, really. And then they can't devote the same amount of time. It's just not possible. So it's a bit bumpier, okay? And they're getting, more different classes, and they're having to change the way they teach. And we call that trying out. That bit there, that SP support plan, if it's not going well, and it's bumpy, they're new, but they're not getting their plans in on time. They're not being very professional. They're not listening to your feedback. They're not able to act on the feedback. That's when we get a support plan done, okay? And that triggers extra intervention from the school, from us, and we see if we can get them through to Christmas. And if not, there's other things that come into play. So we're assessing them again. So guiding them through the learning progression framework. We'll have mentor meetings each week, okay? And then they're teaching up to 8 hours. Then we've got that. So really here, so PPPA, we're assessing professional, are they professional? Have they settled in? PPPB, we're assessing their teaching. We're looking at their teaching formatively, looking at the teacher standards, how are they getting on? And then again, we stay at 8 hours all the way through in this consolidating phase of placement 1, and then they move on. And the cycle kind of continues, all right? We get an assessment point. They move to their next placement. APK is their big assignment that they'll be working on throughout their placement. Mentors need to be mindful of that. We move on. They take a bit of a dip because it's all new, but they have to get quickly on board teaching. And we're moving towards 12 hours in placement 2, assessment points again, support plan points again. And then the last phase in May is meeting the standards. They have to be meeting the standards by this point. Guidance all the way through about formatively helping them towards it. But at this point, they've got to do it, okay? And then they finish right at the end of May. This isn't really IST in May because they really haven't got much to be doing afterwards, apart from some really lovely enrichment week activities. And then they're done. And then a lot of them start their jobs, okay? This is for the school direct training and school direct salaried, where they have this much shorter second placement. Now, it's not really moving on. They move aside and then they move back. Okay. Now, this puts a certain pressure on a school direct trainee, if I'm honest, that if they don't get a real chance to reinvent, the stakes are slightly higher. Yeah. PGCE trainees can make mistakes in placement 1, maybe be too familiar, maybe struggle with behavior a bit more, and they get to totally reinvent themselves in placement 2. That's not really an option for a school direct salary because they're coming back. And if the kids suddenly go, "Ooh, you weren't like that before," it's a bit odd. So they've got to get it right earlier on. Their second placement is about honing different skills, okay? Have they not had opportunities to teach post-16, for example? Have they not had much opportunity to teach a GCSE group? Have they not had many opportunities to teach children that struggle a bit more? Okay, that's what that bit is for. Gain other opportunities and gain more evidence towards the teacher standards. Okay, so section 4, preparing for your trainee. Very important for a new mentor to try to get this right. So there's all kinds of things that they need to do while they're in school. They need to feel a part of everything, a part of the department. Please don't let them be separate. It's a horrible feeling. Please involve them in what you do. They have to have a mentor meeting with you once a week. It's absolutely essential. It's an entitlement. It's mandatory. It cannot be missed. They're also entitled to professional studies once a week. Now, they're not delivered by you as a mentor, but it's important for you to check that they're going to them and that they are happening. They have to plan and deliver their lessons. Really important that they plan their own lessons. They're not to use the set scheme of work as their lesson. They can use it for an idea or for some kind of guidance, but that's not, they have to plan their own lessons. They have to assess pupils. It's not just teach it and run. They've got to check the kids definitely have learned something and how to move the children forward. They have to be a form tutor, incredibly important job. So you need to make sure that they're attached to a form. And all the way through the time that they're in school, they must improve their subject knowledge and have opportunities to improve their subject knowledge. Now, they will also, apart from all of that, which is no mean feat, they've got tasks that we give them that keep building this knowledge, their curriculum knowledge, all the way through the year. They have two big assignments. The big written one is called APK, Applying Professional Knowledge. So they do loads of reading, they design a scheme of work, they teach that scheme of work, and they evaluate how well it went, linked to the scholarship, linked to their subject-specific scholarship. And then at the end of the course, there's one called Reflecting on Professional Knowledge, which is pretty much a viva for people that have had a viva. So it's evidence-based discussion, but all linked again to subject-specific scholarship. So that's why a PGC is tough. You're working in school 4 days a week, doing all this stuff, trying to pick up your subject knowledge, teaching all these different kids, assessing them, having mentor meetings, being given loads of feedback, and you've got to juggle uni. No mean feat, okay? That's why they get so tired. So getting ready for them, preparing. So you're watching this video the week of September the 20th. No, I'm going to take, September the 13th. I'm thinking of the other meetings. Apologies. So you're watching this the week of September the 13th. And this is what you should be thinking about and getting ready and looking at the guidebook. Now, I'm just going to swap my share for a sec and show you what the guidebook looks like. Okay, so I've just popped into Google, and on the partnership website, this is what the page looks like. And then here's the mentor guidebook, which I'm sure you've already looked at the beginning of this session, but it's all linked. So here's designing their timetables, for example, that you'll need to look at in a sec. Okay, so we'll just go back to the slides. Right, so getting ready for our trainee. So you need to design their timetable. You're here at the training, so that's great. That's the biggest part of it probably to begin with. Think about their timetable. They need to settle in and feel welcome. And you need to have a Zoom with them the week of the 20th of September. I'll flick through that because I'm getting a bit worried about time. Now, you need to meet with them as soon as you can when they arrive on September the 27th, okay? If you don't meet with them to the end of the week, it really is quite distressing for them. And they're like, I haven't met my mentor. I've done all this other stuff, but I haven't met my mentor. They know how important you are. Make sure you have a meeting with them. You need to introduce them to the team. Make sure they know where they're going for professional studies. That's the thing, guide them all the way through. The more effort you put in that first few weeks, the less you'll have to do later on. Okay. Make sure they've got access to all the policies. They know how to use the IT, show them where the schemes of work are, how to take the registers. And obviously the behavior policy is extremely important. Now their timetable needs to be a mix of 2 key stages. So for most of our trainees, it's key stage 3 and key stage 4. Now I know it's going to be difficult to timetable in key stage 4 right now with what's happened with the pandemic, but they have to have it. Year 11, you're probably not going to give them year 11, but they do need to have year 10. It needs to be 50% with you as much as possible. Now, we know that that's going to be, we're going to move those goalposts because they might not be able to be with you 50%. If you're a head of department, we certainly know they're not going to be with you 50%. Okay. Don't spread them too thin. Please don't have, 8 hours teaching. They can't have 8 different classes with 8 different teachers. That's too much. Now we're trying desperately to manage trainee teacher workload. And if they're liaising and coordinating with 8 different members of staff, it's too much. It's too much. So please, less classes so they can get to know the classes, least number of teachers possible. That's when they'll do well. And then you've got less work to do if they're doing well. So let's plan this smartly. They have to have a tutor group in there. No negotiation. It has to be in there. Their meetings need to be in there. Their meetings with you need to be timetabled. They need to plan when they're doing their observations. Now, induction, it's kind of done for them. They're told where to go. When it's their normal timetable, please timetable in. That's when you're going to observe somebody, and keep that going all the way through the year. Don't let them stop. It's part of their entitlement to observe, right? That's where their responsibility comes in. So you provide the opportunities for them to observe. They need to do it, okay? Now, don't put Fridays on their timetable for placement 1 because they won't be there, and they're not to set cover. That's not their job. Placement 2, when they're in on Fridays, yes, they can set cover. Okay, that's a different thing because they're only in for a few uni Fridays in placement 2. And the guidebook, like I've shown you, gives you more detail about how to design the timetable. The first mentor meeting is incredibly important. Now, these meetings need to happen every single week for at least an hour throughout their entire placement. Vital, essential. It cannot be in a time where you think you're going to be taken for cover. It's not okay. It needs to be on your timetable as well as on theirs, and fixed. Now, that first meeting is all about getting to know them, all right? What are their interests and passions? What are their subject strengths? And where are their gaps? Now, between you and your trainee, you'll negotiate. Do you want them to work on those weaker areas of subject knowledge early on in the placement where they've got more planning time? Or do you want to build their confidence and start them teaching something they feel quite comfortable with? Either is fine. And the training might lead you a bit in that and say, please give me something that I find challenging first, because I know I've got to teach it eventually, and I've got the luxury of a bit more time to begin with. Or they're nervous and like, I just want to teach what I know. So ask them about, there's going to be any questions about how the school is run, what the school is like. Be honest with them. Please be honest. And do outline your expectations. Don't do that kind of, oh yeah, well, I really like it if. Just tell them what to do. Don't leave it open to interpretation that then later on you're like, God, I wish I'd spelt that out really clearly. Don't be fuzzy. Say it how it is. It'll save you time. And then throughout the year, check the guidebook about a list of recommended subject topics for your mentor meetings. It's in the appendices at the end. Okay, so after induction, section 5. Yeah, we're all right, I think. So we need to follow a pattern. Same slot for mentor meeting every single week. Please don't move it. Keep it to a slot that you know it won't be disrupted. So lots of mentors do it after school. Thank you for that. The location is important and it needs to be private. In the staff room is not okay. It's not all right. It's really intimidating for a trainee to have their meeting in the staff room. A science staff room where there's loads of technicians walking around. No, it's not okay. So somewhere private. Please avoid negative language. Even if the trainee, and sometimes they can be like this, if the trainee is defensive and they thought they'd be much better, this is normally where it comes in. Well, I thought I'd be really good at this. Actually, everyone, it takes time. We still need to be positive if they are negative. Okay, I know that can be quite hard, but that's our job. All right, is to focus on the positive, avoid negative language, focus on the learning progression framework questions. They're worded about give the question to the trainee. And if they're constantly, oh, I don't know, you need to get in touch with us. Conversations are developmental, okay? And I've talked about what the focus is. Now, after each mentor meeting, they fill in a tracker document. Gosh, I know, it's death by paperwork, isn't it, really? But this is what the trainee does. Every Thursday evening or before Thursday evening, after your mentor meeting, after their weekly observation, they fill this in. It's a massive Google Doc. And they're asked what their week is like. Hopefully it's good. They're asked what they focused on each week in terms of their curriculum. Now, that might be uni side curriculum, might be school side curriculum. Okay, it's up to them, really. What was their focus? They record what happened in the mentor meeting. Now, we monitor these. So if every single week it's just we discussed the lesson, we discussed what to teach next week, that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for you looking at the learning progression framework, thinking about what that list is in the guidebook and making these developmental. What is the focus? Is it assessment this week? Is it inclusion this week? What's the real focus? Now, it'll be born out of the observation, obviously, you'll see something in the observation like, we really need to focus on that. That's kind of urgent. Okay. So you'll probably deviate from the guidebook. It's very likely you'll deviate from the guidebook, but let's make sure that each week the mentor meeting has its own flavor, that they don't end up all looking the same. Now, the lesson observation is extraordinarily important in the life of a trainee. They must have 3 targets. Okay. The targets is what sets them up for improvement, but they also need 3 areas of strength. Otherwise, they're going to change things that were already working. The strengths are just as important in a way. You know, knowing that I keep that the same, good, I'm all right at that, I won't change that, I'm going to focus on this, okay? And they must be 3. Please not 1 in each one. And I'll show you an example in a sec of what not to do, really. Now, how to get them teaching. They need to observe first, then, and they're acting as a teaching assistant as well. Little starters, little plenaries, get them making resources for your lessons. They might do a lesson plan and you teach it, okay? So scaffold it, all right? So little bit of this, building to that, and give them feedback. You know, if they do a starter, do give them a bit of feedback so they can start to build that up. Once they start teaching, they must use the Sussex lesson plan every single lesson. No negotiation. They're not to take chunks out of it and go, oh, I just deleted the assessment bit. It's what happened to me a couple of years ago. How could you just delete the assessment bit? They have to use it until they're at a stage, not till placement 2, where we might get them doing smaller lesson plans as they get to 12 hours. They must hand it to you in advance, email it to you, hand it to you at least 24 hours in advance. 48's okay. 72, please don't ask them to do it 72 hours in advance. That just adds an awful lot of stress. Check their plan. That's your job, is to check their plan and check that it's not wildly off, okay? But don't fiddle too much, otherwise they won't know what was theirs and what was yours. So if there's something really obviously awful about the lesson plan, you're like, gosh, no, I'm going to tell you straight away, that's not safe. Science, DT, right? That's not safe. Or, you know, I just know that's not going to work for these kids. It's pitched too high. It's pitched too low. Please change that, okay? Otherwise, if you fiddle too much with it, what are you really feeding back on? Their lesson or your lesson? They have to learn to plan, teach, reflect on their own planning, all right? So not too much fiddling. Now, the first lessons, the first term really, co-planning, right? Hold their hand until they can do it on their own, okay? Observing. An established focus is really important. What are you looking for in this lesson observation? To begin with, it will be very general, right? We're looking at all aspects of the core curricular framework. We're looking at all aspects of the teaching standards, okay? But particular focus on professionalism, behavior, and their planning, really, to begin with. Establish the rules, okay? So it also might not also be you observing them. So can you please make sure that other members of the department know the rules for the observation too? Are you just going to sit at the back? Are they going to use you as a teaching assistant? It's quite a useful thing to do for certain sections of the lesson. Please write, especially to begin with, verbose notes. Either type them straight into the lesson observation form or handwrite them, but hand them over. Please don't hand them over a week later. They can't fill in their tracker. They're then going to teach for a whole week without knowing what their focus was. And then you're going to think, well, you're not acting on your targets. And they're going to say, well, you didn't give them to me. Okay. So please make sure they're handed over nice and swiftly. Okay. Try to look quite positive at the back. I've been accused of this before. I don't mean to. Don't sit there frowning. Try and sort of, have the sort of passive face of, yes, it's all going well, even if all around you is falling to pieces. The lesson observation feedback is an incredibly important form. I've shown you the tracker. I'm going to show you one filled in a sec. They need time to reflect after the lesson. So please don't just kind of like, right, whoop, you've done the lesson, let's talk about it now. Because they're like, whoa, especially to begin with, they're like, I haven't got a clue what just happened. I don't know. I nearly ran away from my first lesson. So they're feeling stressed. The adrenaline's still pumping. Okay. Give them a bit of time. They need to reflect. They need to write down their reflections, and then you talk about it. Otherwise, you're going to sort of go, well, how do you reckon it went? And they're going to go, I ain't got a clue. I literally don't know. It's just happened. It was stressful. In that debrief, when you eventually get there, they'll have their feedback notes. You'll have your observation feedback. The learning progression framework can come in, the one that's geared with the questions, and we use that. So we're questioning them, not just going, yeah, that was all right. I'm going to tell you what to do differently next time. Asking them questions. What can we, how did you notice? Did you notice Bobby at the front? Did you notice what work he was doing? How much did he get done today? Think about your targets. You've set them and ask the questions based on it. Now, targets are no good, especially at the beginning, without a strategy. So if you write something as vague as get them to behave better, and there's nothing, please don't write that, and there's nothing at the other side to go, how to, it's useless to them. Absolutely useless. They need to know the how to. And again, there's guidance in the guidebook for that. Now, let me show you. I think it's the next slide. Yeah, here we go. So here's the tracker that we see. So this is what we see each week from the trainees. Now, here's an example, really, I'm going to be honest, this first one, of what not to do. So we've got, there's a strength here of being stern with the class and not letting them get away with low-level misdemeanors. That's quite useful. I don't know if we want the word stern. Firm is maybe a better word that we're looking for. I noticed that none of these, I couldn't tell what subject this is from these, okay? I don't know what subject this is. It could be anything. Your targets really need to reflect the subject that your trainee is teaching. And the same down the bottom here. Now we've got one target here. Be present in the room, not behind the desk, move around the room rather than getting students to come to you. So I think this lesson, by the looks of it, was a bit of a disaster. This teacher hasn't moved, okay? And yet they've been given 3 strengths and 1 target, where the target, I think, is quite a serious one, okay? So we need 3 targets. How did the kids learn? Okay. I can't see whether the children learn anything here. I can't see it. Okay. And again, over here, I can't see whether the kids learn anything. Here's some lovely stuff, right? This is examples of good feedback. I'm running out of time. There's a star. Look at it again. Look at this one for examples of targets. So here's the targets. And look at the strategies. Look at those strategies. You will save yourself so much time in the mentor meeting if we've got lots of detail on the observation forms. Okay. Now, section 6, how do we assess them? Throughout the year, there are strategic points like I showed you in the calendar. Okay. First one is at the end of October. PPPA, Professional Practice Profile. I know, acronym central. There's 5. Okay. October, Christmas, February half term, that's the end of placement 1, Easter, and then the end one, okay? First 4, formative, right? We're giving them feedback. We're thinking about, are they moving in the right direction? Are they making progress? Are they getting better? Are they on the right track to meet the teacher standards, okay? And that's the way we're going to word it. It's not, oh, you're awful, I'm failing you, although we do have that word coming up in a bit. But it's how are we getting on? First one's about professionalism. The next ones are all about their teaching and how well the children are learning. So important. And then the last one is phrased terminally. Yeah, this is how you've done. You have met this standard. These are your strengths, moving on to become an early career teacher. Okay, now this is what the form looks like. So from the trainee's perspective, it's got the apple and the T at the front, and then it's all electronic. You see, we've got phase A, B, C, D, and E, just like I showed you on the calendar, finding out, trying out, consolidating, moving on, and being assessed against the teaching standards, meeting the teaching standards. Now, I really hope we're going to be ticking the pass box. So pass is this professional practice, but they're going to need some help, and then failing it. Now, you can't just tick failing it unless you've taken them down that support plan route. Okay, that's really important. This is what they fill in. So they will look at their evidence and they complete this. You look at this, they'll be filling this in their tracker all the way through the year. You look at this and go, yeah, that's a good reflection. I've seen that happen. Please don't sign them off with the PPPs if you haven't looked at their evidence, because you've got no proof, right? You've seen them teach, but they can't meet the standards at the end unless they've got evidence. So please, evidence driven for these assessment periods. Sorry, just checking the time. Now, this is what you fill in, okay? So they show you their evidence, you discuss it before each of these assessment points, and you think, right, yeah, they're on track. I'm going to give them little ticks or crosses, whichever it is on the blob. They're on track towards meeting the teacher standards. Now, this is all linked to the 5 core areas of the CCF, and importantly linked to the teacher standards too. Okay, so we've grouped them together. There's your pedagogy, there's the relationships, behaviour and wellbeing, there's your curriculum, assessment and professional behaviour. Now, insufficient progress, okay, means that we need to do more with them. They'll probably need to go on a support plan, okay? But most of them, hopefully, especially PPPA, are along the right track. Then what you do, so you've gone, right, no, we're doing grand, we're moving along. You give them some formative feedback. Then we've got their strengths, make sure they're detailed, and then we've got their areas for development, okay? Nice, detailed, specific language. You then send it to the professional tutor, trainee signs it, you sign it, professional tutor signs it. You need to get it to the professional tutor before half term. Now, they wanted an extension because they're dealing with all the early career stuff. So you get it before half term, they're going to get it to us after half term. We then read it and send a statement back. There's an example of some good stuff. See, this is the detail we're looking for that formative feedback. Okay, now, final stuff. How to work with us at the uni. Now, as a curriculum tutor, the best thing I ever get in my life, apart from a present, I suppose, is an email from a mentor, right? I love it when they say nice things. They're the best emails ever. But I also really like it, weirdly, bit twisted, when I get an email that says we've got a bit of a problem here, because then I know my mentor knows their trainee, is working with the trainee, has a relationship with the trainee enough to tell me that there's a problem, and then we can fix it, right? Or we guide the trainee out of teaching, which is a final resort. We don't want to know in December that there was a big problem with the trainee with professionalism and attendance early on. That's just no use to us. Early alerts, just get in regular habits of contacting your curriculum tutor. Now, they know what's normal for a trainee. Experienced tutors, I don't know how many trainees I've trained. It's got to be hundreds now, I suppose. So we know what kind of is normal for a bit phase. So if you're like, oh, I don't know if this is normal, is it? Talk to us. We'll be able to help you. We do our best to place our trainees in the right school, the school that matches them. We can't always get it right. It's a big partnership, right? 340 trainees. So if there's teething troubles, please do let us know. Email us just all the time, just constantly be emailing us and letting us know how they're getting on. Okay, so let's think if it doesn't go well. So what are the signs that it doesn't go well? So a trainee should be early, but not too early that they're irritating. Early, properly dressed, acting on every bit of feedback, super keen, bulgy pencil cases. I'm doing the session for them about how to arrive in school. Year 7, falling over their backpack. Okay, totally prepared. You know, almost a mug carabined to their rucksack is what we're looking for. Super scout. Okay, if they're not, then we need to know about it immediately. So their attendance, if they're suddenly not, especially if it's Monday mornings, it's just not okay. It's a course just like teaching. We want them in every single day unless there's a really good reason to not be here. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, okay? So we take that into account. Punctuality, lateness, never, ever acceptable in teaching. They're not allowed to be late to professional study session. They mustn't be late to your mentor meeting. And it could be a sign of an organizational issue. So we need to know about those immediately. Dress code. They must follow your school's dress code, not their own invented version, your school's dress code. We need to know about that if it goes wrong too. Okay, so if they're not doing the right thing, a quiet word normally does the trick, if I'm honest. But if they're not responding to it, then let us know. Now, their attitude to workload is unbelievably important. The last thing we want to have, and it happened last year for one of my colleagues, is a trainee sat in the staff room and they're moaning about the amount of work they've got to do. I know, ironic. Sat in the staff room, chatting, moaning about work. It's not a good look, is it? So if they're like that, excessive moaning, please tell them not to. Okay. It is tough when they first start. They are tired when they first start. Everybody's tired at this time of the year when they first start. And they're an information overload. I'll try and be a bit kinder to them. They're an information overload and it is tiring. Okay. But we don't want to hear about the moaning about that. They just got to get on with it. So, and it's not good. It's not good advice for them to moan because then when they really do have a concern, nobody's going to listen. Okay. We want to know about, and you should challenge unprofessional language or just their general attitudes. Okay. If they're a bit snarly, if everything is too much trouble, we want to, don't let that happen. That's not okay. They have to be a real benefit to you. They're supposed to come in super sparky, bouncy. Once they start teaching, another thing that could be a problem is overly needy. So you've told them what to do and they keep coming back with, no, I need you to tell me again. I need you to tell me again. Or also just not listening to the fact that they're doing really well. Okay. Nobody wants to keep telling somebody that they're really good and then they don't act on it. Unable to cope with the workload. So that 48 hours in advance or 24 for a lesson plan, if they're not meeting that, that's a problem. Okay. Arriving without a lesson plan is a no-no. You don't let them teach. They're not allowed to teach if they haven't planned it. This is a little too common. Finding it hard to take your advice. They must do what you tell them to do if it's reasonable, okay? Or thinking that they might know better. That's a big okay? They are the Padawan. They're the one that's here for the training. They're not the expert. Giving you feedback at the end of observing your lesson is not okay. That's not what they're there for. They're there to take everything they see and spin it into gold. Okay. They're not there to give you advice. All right. They must reflect on their teaching. If they constantly say, I don't know, at the end of a lesson, so you say, well, how do you think it went? I don't know. That's not okay. They must reflect on their teaching. Excuse me, cough. Being too defensive is not good. Again, that's a little flag. And keeping up with their paperwork. Now, sometimes we realize that people have had issues with organization their whole life, and it only gets noticed here. Okay. And then we pick up on it, we get them support. And once they start teaching, they have to mark. They're not allowed to just not mark, but they aren't here to do your marking. Okay. They're here to do their own marking. Now, what happens if they don't go to plan and any of those things happen? You contact us immediately. Say, I'm going to have a word with them, but I'm giving you a heads up. Constantly remind them that what we're giving them isn't criticism, it's feedback. Okay. They are not going to be perfect when they arrive. They need to be told what to improve on and the strategies to do it. But if we're as positive as possible, it shouldn't be too hard. If a lesson observation really does bomb and you're like, ooh, but they're normally really quite good, there's nothing to say that you can't do another lesson observation that week. Don't think that was the formal observation that has to go forward. Maybe there's another way around it. Okay. Now, so thank you so much for listening. I know it's quite a long slog. I'm so sorry. There's just a lot to get through, especially with the CCF and everything. Thank you so much for your attention. I really do appreciate it. Now we've completed this session. The next one for you, wonderful new mentors, is the generic mentor training video. Now that goes through forms. I skirt through them, really, not in the detail that I've shown you here. Skirted through, and to be honest, anyone can fill in a form. We just want detail. That's what we're asking for. The forms are all on our partnership pages. Have a good route through them, I advise. And then if you've got any problems, contact your curriculum tutor. There's a subject specific mentor meeting there. So watch the generic. That's for everybody after this one. Not straight after, that'd be way too much me. And then September the 20th is your subject specific. They are really important sessions. That's where you meet the other yous, right? So all the English mentors get together, my science mentors get together. I'm going to make a plea for those of you that are in much smaller cohorts. RE, for example, is only 5, right? if half of you don't show up, that's not a community of mentors. Business studies is a small group. Psychology is a small group. Please, 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 please try and make the effort to come to those sessions. We do not record them. They're not that kind of session. They're not this. Okay, they're not training, they're not information, they're about communities of people talking about stuff that matters to them. And you can't be in a community if you don't turn up. So they're breakout groups and stuff. So please do show up to those. Please come to all the meetings through the year. It's really important. You'll get the most out of it if you do as well. Now, as a follow-up to this, I'm going to do a Q&A on a Zoom on Thursday, the 30th of September. So your trainees will have arrived, and that's when you might have more questions. I thought we'd wait until then at 4:30. And there's the meeting ID and there's the passcode. Okay. Now, because it's a Q&A, some people will have a question straight away and you might be waiting. So I apologize for that in advance, but it might be that the question is pertinent to you. The other thing you can do is email me. All right. Email me, it's a quick query. And what I might do is hold all those emails because there might be a lot. If there are loads, I'll store them and then I'll answer them after that particular meeting. Okay. But also you can contact your curriculum tutor. They're a fountain of knowledge. Okay. So thank you again for agreeing to be a mentor for Sussex University. I wish you all the best. It's going to be great. It's just the best thing ever to be a mentor, especially when you start planning your calendar. You know, you're looking at your week and going, I'm not teaching that one. I'm not teaching that one because my trainee is. I used to love that feeling. I always used to take a pair. Very nice to share my classes with a new teacher. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll see you very, very soon, I hope.